Welcome to my talk. It's called Staying Sane with Small Incremental Releases. And that is partly what I'm going to talk about today. It's mostly what I'm going to talk about. My name is Cohen. I helped start a company called Opbeat, where I work today. You can recognize us by these giant coffee pots. That's our logo. You can find me on Twitter and GitHub at Cohen. And at Opbeat, we do next-generation performance monitoring. So if you're building a web application and you're worried about performance, you should check us out. It looks a bit like this. We have pretty graphs, deep insights, and a mobile application, so you can stay up to date while you're on the go. OK, so first, I'm going to tell you a story. A real story that happened at Opbeat. And then I'm going to explain to you why small incremental releases are better, why you're going to have a better life if you start releasing small incremental releases. And then I'm going to tell you how to get there. So I'll give you actionable tips on how to get really good at shipping small incremental releases. And why do we want to ship small incremental releases? What is it? Where is it that we want to go? Nirvana, where we ship more cool stuff to our users and our open source collaborators, and where we sleep more. So we don't get woken up in the middle of the night because something isn't working. So that's where we want to go. And mostly, it's about increasing velocity of our development and increasing the quality of the code we output. Now, fair warning, if you're building for the Apple App Store, a lot of the tips that I have here are not going to be applicable because Apple takes a while to review your application, unfortunately. OK, story time. So at Opbeat, we've been working on this amazing new feature. We'd spent 3 weeks on it, and we were super excited to finally ship it. It had 39 commits and 20 changed files. It was pretty big, a very significant feature. And we were really, really excited to get it out. It also happened to be that there was 6 bug fixes in this thing we were about to ship, and also 4 improvements. It just happened that we fixed some bugs and made some improvements. But of course, when we finally shipped it, this is what happened. Everything was on fire. And it was very, very uncomfortable. We've been working on this awesome new thing for 3 weeks, but it didn't work. So we had to roll it back and fix it and try again. And it wasn't a great day. We had been very excited. We'd sort of built up momentum. Everybody was ready to push the button, and it didn't work. So we rolled it back. We fixed it. We tried again. And this time, it sort of worked. I think we tried 2 more times before it actually got out, which was horrible, a horrible experience. And in general, rolling back stuff is super stressful. When you ship something that doesn't work, you get really stressed out. It's a really bad feeling. It's also super anticlimactic. You've been working on this awesome thing for 3 weeks, and you're very, very excited to finally get it out the door, and it doesn't work. So in total, it's just really demotivating. It's a bad situation. So we asked ourselves, what happened? How did we end up here? Why did it fail? And what became obvious was that all of this stuff should have been shipped individually. And in hindsight, it's obvious. Ship it individually. It's not a big deal. Just get things out one at a time. So it was simply too much, too big of a release. And there's a lot of reasons why big releases fail. In this particular example, the code review took half a day, and it wasn't very thorough. How do I know it wasn't very thorough? Because I did it. And you might have seen this tweet. In my experience, it's pretty accurate. So if you have 10 lines of code, the code review is going to uncover 10 deficiencies. But if you have a 500-line review, it's just going to say, looks good to me, ship it, no problem. And so this is an experience that I've certainly felt. This is something that really resonates with what I've experienced. But there's actually also some actual data on it. So Smart Bear Software did this study on 2,500 code reviews and 3.2 million lines of code. And they found sort of a correlation between the size of the code review and the number of defects found. So the graph shows you the number of detected defects per 1,000 lines of code on the one axis and the number of lines of code on the review on the other axis. And I'm not sure that these dots really sort of merit this very smooth, fine line that they've drawn on here, but there does seem to be a correlation. So you should really be shipping small incremental releases. It is something that we've learned the hard way, and I think you'll find that if you start shipping small incremental releases, you are going to have a better time. There are other reasons why you should be shipping small incremental releases. One of them is that shipping feels good. It's an amazing feeling when you press the button and this new cool stuff goes out to your users. We want to do that more. We want to feel good more. We want to be more happy. Another reason is that when something does break, if you shipped a small release, it's much easier to answer these questions. What's changed, and who can fix it? If you get really good at shipping small releases, you'll end up in a place where each release only involves one developer. Then it's very easy to answer who can fix it. It's a good situation. This is where you want to be. And really, it's about accountability. If you have small releases, accountability becomes much more clear. You know who should fix this because that's the person who shipped it. And at Opbeat, we've adopted this policy. And it's something that we've had with us from the very beginning. And the idea is that if you build something, then you're the person that presses the button to make it go into production. So you're there in the office or working remote, pressing the button, and stuff goes out to production. That means that when stuff breaks, you're around to fix it. It makes it much easier to answer what changed and who can fix it. There are other reasons why you should be making small incremental releases. It's easier to roll stuff back. So if you've only changed a tiny thing, chances are your users might not even have started using the new thing yet because they haven't realized it's gone out. It's a very bad situation when you roll something out to users, they start using it, and you have to take it away from them again because it doesn't work properly. So they get a bad experience twice. First, they start using the new thing, it doesn't really work, and then you take it away again. Double bad. And there's also more parallelism in the team, less blocking, because you're deploying stuff all the time. OK. If you're convinced, are you convinced? Sort of? Cool. Good. So how do we get there? What do we need to do to start shipping small incremental releases? There's a few prerequisites that you need to sort of check, that you need to do. One of them is you need to be able to do reliable and fast deployments. So you need to be able to trust that when you press the button, the code actually goes out properly, and there's no service disruption for your users. That's extremely important. Another thing is, right, by the way, at Opbeat, it takes us 1 to 2 minutes to get code into production, and it's one command that you type. That's all it takes. Another thing that is really important is good automatic tests. Now, you want to know that when you press the button, the stuff that goes out actually works, or be confident to a pretty high degree that it actually works. And so if somebody has to click through your whole application every time you want to ship something to figure out if it still works, it's not going to work. Like, you can't do small releases then. So you need automated tests. They need to run quickly, and they need to be reliable. Finally, you need low overhead code reviews. If a committee of 3 people have to review your pull request and all say thumbs up every time you need to ship something, it's not going to work. If you only get your stuff reviewed every other Monday when there's a full moon, it's not going to work. You need a lightweight process that enables quick and low overhead code reviews. OK, so how many have that? Let me see a show of hands. It's like 4 people. OK. I was going to say, if you already have that, then you can pat yourself on the back. So you're 4 people, you can pat yourself on the back. Good job. And we actually have this at Opbeat. So we still ran into trouble. And we were asking ourselves, what's going on? We have all this good stuff in place, but we still run into these huge releases once in a while. What's going on? So it turns out that this is the train of thought that can lead to big releases. So you're working on this thing. Let's call it feature A. It's amazing. You can't wait to get it out. It's going to change how people think about sliced bread. And it uses module B. So your thing is, feature A is brilliant. The code is clean, crisp. Features are the feature is amazing, and the tests are great. And it uses module B, which sort of does what it's supposed to do. And you took a little peek inside module B, and you find that the code is pretty messy, and the tests aren't that great. And the API that you're coding up against is not exactly what you wanted it to be. So you think to yourself, OK, while I'm doing this really nice feature A, I might just go ahead and refactor module B. Just while I'm at it, refactor module B. No big deal. And there you have it. You have a big release, and you've made a mistake. That's a problem. What you really should have done is finish feature A, ship it, get it working, get it out there, then go back, refactor module B. Or drop what you're doing with feature A, refactor module B, ship that, and then go back to finishing feature A. And so what goes on inside the developer's head in this particular scenario is, can I just roll this fix into that branch that I'm already working on? And the developer is thinking, what is the risk of doing a big release? And hopefully I've convinced you that big releases are bad and that there's significant risk. You saw the graph. And then on the other side, the developer thinks, what is the overhead of doing another release? What is the overhead of putting this fix in a separate release? And so, of course, you can work on minimizing that overhead. Remember the 3 prerequisites that I talked about? So this is the sort of thought process the rational developer goes through. So I encourage you all the time to think about, what is the smallest possible release I can make that makes sense? Every day. What is the smallest possible release I can make that makes sense? That actually makes a difference. And it turns out that even if you're building a single feature, you can, most of the time, ship it in separate releases. So you can split up that one feature and ship it in separate releases. How? How does that make sense? How are my users going to use an unfinished feature? And this is where I talk about feature flags, or how I learned to stop worrying and love feature flags. Who here are familiar with feature flags? Good bunch, cool. How many of you folks use them? Slightly less amount of people. OK. Well, feature flags are these if-else statements that you put into your code. And so that enables you to run the code, this particular piece of code, only for a group of users that you've selected. And that means you can selectively enable half a feature or an unfinished feature for a group of trusted users. So you reach out to them and you tell them, hey, we're building this new thing. We're really excited about it. We've enabled this feature flag for you, so you can have a first look. What do you think? Is it fast enough? Is it doing what you thought it would do? Now, if you're using feature flags, you can suddenly ship a single feature over multiple releases. That's pretty cool. Now, the first time you use feature flags, you'll probably feel a little little dirty, because it's not typically the way developers like to use these. Developers like to do these weird if-else statements that I have in my code, but it's actually a really good tool. So the idea here is, of course, to get code into production quickly, get it in front of the users, see what they think, see if your stuff actually works. It also enables you to make much smaller releases with all the advantages that we just heard about. So you can get code more quickly in production, easier with feature flags. Now, of course, making small incremental releases takes practice, and it's a balance. You need to find the right balance between the overhead of actually making a release and then the risk in making a huge release. So it does take practice. And a good way to get better at it is to make it a part of the review process. So ask the author of the code when you're reviewing something if this could possibly be split up. Could we ship this in separate releases? What if we put it behind a feature flag? So what does feature flags look like in open source? It's slightly different in open source. What you can do is you can ask some of your users to install a module directly from GitHub, for example. So you push to a new branch, and you ask them to install this new cool thing that you've been working on. And so in open source, it's a little bit flipped around. The user basically decides if they want to try out your new thing, instead of you just opting them in. OK. I want to talk about simple. A big part of shipping small releases is this concept of simple. It's important. So you want to ship the simplest thing that's going to work. Nothing simpler than that, but still the simplest thing. And Mike Krieger, the co-founder of Instagram, said this, and I think he's very right. Do the simple thing first. So always try to do the simple thing first. And this is a concept that really helped inform a lot of the design and engineering decisions at Instagram. And a part of doing things that are simple is not reinventing the wheel. So there's different communities that I see in the development world, and some of them have a tendency to reinvent the wheel. There's this thing called the not invented here fallacy. And the concept is that if it wasn't invented here, then we can't use it. Some people have this idea for some reason, and it's a problem. It means that they have to write everything themselves. Now, that sort of goes against all the stuff that is open source, right? There's this fantastic world of open source. There's all this code that we can use. So if you see this, it should be sort of a red alert on your radar. Why can't we use something that already exists? I'm sure there's some kind of open source module that helps us do this. At least look into it. And it comes from this fallacy that the problems we're trying to solve are unique. What we do is special. Nobody else is doing what we do. And it's wrong most of the time, almost all the time. Somebody else tried to solve this problem before you, and they probably made an open source module out of it. Obviously, there's exceptions, edge cases. But most of the time, somebody else did it before you, and they might even be smarter than you. So when you hear a coworker that says, let's build a distributed system to solve this, that's what we need, your first reaction should typically be, no, probably not. Some variations of this, if you want to deliver value to your customers or users, is don't try to build automatic failover systems, don't try to implement leadership election systems, don't invent your own encryption scheme. And in the open source world, it probably looks more like this. Don't try to build your own JSON parser. Don't try to build a new JSON database if you want to deliver value to your users. If you're just goofing out, having fun, then by all means, do whatever you want. If you're trying to ship more cool stuff to your users, and if you're trying to sleep more and not get interrupted in the middle of the night, you should probably look into something that already exists and keep things simple. So in summary, you should practice shipping the smallest possible release that makes sense. You should strive to get code into production quickly. One of the tools you can use is feature flags. And then try to keep things as simple as possible. Don't reinvent the wheel. That's it. My name is Cohen. I'm from Opbeat. Thank you.